Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Myth and Magic event, in which the Moshu the Guardian is added to the game. So this week we got a billion things going on. We got the Talk Like a Pirate Day pet coming out on Wednesday. The holiday for that was yesterday, of course. We have ourselves Guild Wars going on throughout that the entire week. Of course, we'll be doing that on stream every single night, messing around with that. It's pretty fun Guild War battles. And we also have a Vault event weekend this weekend for a bunch of additional loot, so that's always fun. Hopefully they don't nerf it for a third time now. But anyways, as far as the glory trip that's available this week, we have Moshu the Guardian. So this thing is an epic, so you can end up getting arcane plane trait stones for very cheap, only 200 glory each, cheapest you'll ever be able to get them. So if you need a bunch of them, stock up now while you can. As far as your troop itself, it's kind of the standard potion related troop that we have going on. Ends up enchanting a random ally, creates 1 to 3 purple mana potions, and then if any of them are cursed, ends up having 50% chance to gain an extra turn. Ends up having a way to curse off of its skulls as well. Overall, it's not really going to be used much. You might still want to get it, of course, obviously maxed for kingdom upgrading purposes. However, of all these potion related ones, it does seem like it's going to be one of the weakest ones. Not only because of what it's doing, but also because of the campaign. If we go check this real quick, all the way at the end of the campaign, we actually have the Fountain of Stars, which is going to be a decent way of creating purple potions. So there's probably not going to be as much of a need to end up using the other troop, although the other troop does feed purple back into itself, and this thing specifically does not. That's not going to be enough to really make it stand out compared to that mythic. So assuming people can get access to that mythic, that troop is going to be even more useless. Though personally, I found almost all of them to be rather bad, and that one being pretty much no difference compared to something like Flask, which is a much more viable option in many situations. Anyways, as far as the event key drop table, there are quite a few things that are noteworthy. As far as the drop table, it is of course associated specifically to the Shentang Kingdom. There are 5 things within the Shentang drop table that you will not specifically be able to get this week. One of those is Doom of Darkness. That'll be available in a billion years whenever the Tower of Doom event finally rolls back around. And aside from that, the other 4 that you can't get, of course, are the faction troops, which are the 4 Lyrasza's Lair faction troops. Everything else you see here, you will be able to get within the event key drop table. The most noteworthy things that you would want to pick up, especially if you're a little bit earlier on in the game, and if you don't have a Yagway or Quillen yet, really high priority to try picking these up with event keys this week, if nothing else. They're both ridiculously strong, particularly Yagway. Well, technically both. They're both actually used for the what I would probably consider the strongest non-mythic teams within the game. The Yagway Queen Titania combo and the Divinish Ball of Quillen. There are a few others as well, but they're, I feel like, the slightly more notorious ones. But they're at least the ones I like the most. But anyways, yeah, they have 2 really, really good no mythic full builds. Yagway, main premise with him, he's actually the first troop I ever fully medaled, and to this day I still feel like he's one of the best value troops to initially fully medal. As far as what he does, he deals a bunch of damage to the first 2 enemies, boosted by life, and he ends up stealing a bunch of magic as well. One pretty noteworthy thing to mention about the stealing of magic is, if I'm not mistaken, he does end up retroactively doing it in a way where it does count for his value. Quite a few things like do or do not, and it's not really consistent on if something does or doesn't. However, he does do the magic steal prior to him doing his damage calculation, meaning that he is theoretically, assuming they still have magic, which in almost every situation they should, he should be getting 8 additional magic, meaning he's hitting for 16 additional damage because he's hitting on 8 on both the 2 enemies. So that's already pretty good. And the fact that he keeps scaling because he keeps gaining more and more life, he keeps gaining more and more magic. The reason he keeps getting more life is he ends up stealing 3 life from the first enemy every single time he ends up matching red gems. And guess what? He transforms all purple to red. Not only does this end up triggering his life steal, which also ends up triggering his amount of extra boost ratio, but that's also a color that he uses. So the red feeds right back into him. He can end up getting extra turns. He's pretty insane. His chance of getting a double kill in a PvP-like situation is ridiculously good. And the fact that he has 20% stats this week makes it even easier to do it. Though even without those 20% stats in a PvP-like situation, he does it very effectively. Also, hey, if you need a red Guild War option, you got it. Actually, you could probably even get away with it on green Guild War. The only problem on red Guild War, though, is of course you might get red countered directly, but overall, really great troop to end up getting. And the other one is Quillen, most commonly used with Divinish Ball of Quillen, though there are a few other skull spam options, but that's the most common one, mostly because Divinish Ball gives a 40% mana start, which is, of course, useful because it's divine. Of course, it can be use down the beast route, however, is a little bit better with divines. One other thing that makes it kind of good with divines is Yellow Storm, and there's pretty much no divine team that wouldn't want to have Yellow Storm. So double negative, but you know, Yellow Storm is really good on divines, and also has a little bit of magic gain. Though oddly enough, most of the teams it gets used on, it actually doesn't really utilize it much. It's out of its 3 traits, oddly enough, uses the Light Storm probably the most of the 3, even though that's not the unique trait on it. And it also has a purple to red, which works really good with Divine Ishpala, because Divine Ishpala does red to skulls, which of course has direct synergy, and also ends up doing brown to skulls, so it gets more skull spam there, and it has a little bit of bless for some passive mana in case the board's being bad. Overall, pretty solid. Not the best mythic out there, but the kind of synergies that it can get into are decently solid. Aside from that, the mythics are kind of meh here. Particularly Tanya. However, the Hongalong can be okay in a pure dragon team. Main reasons it's not necessarily used as much is it is extremely luck based. It has 1.5 billion different luck rolls, and sometimes it'll have a really amazing cast, other times it could be kind of average. One pretty noteworthy thing about it is a mythic with a extra turn chance. While not 100%, it is at 50% with 1 billion other things that can also end up doing. So if nothing else, it's not too bad. Also 70% reduction, oddly enough. Also the only thing that currently has golden armor, even though it's not unique only to it. It's mostly used only in the context of dragon teams, but is one of those troops that you almost need in order to build a proper dragon team in the current state of the game, just because dragons are rather underwhelming and not really a type that is used much in the current state of the game. However, Honglong is one of those rare situations where you can kind of make a dragon team, or you know, a pure dragon team viable. But anyways, that's the event key rundown. Mostly get Yalgway Quillen if you don't have them yet. Otherwise, maybe try for one mythic if you don't have it. Otherwise, Yalgway Quillen's the main priority. As long as you get those and you already have those, that's the main thing that you want to make sure you focus with it. Anyway, aside from that, we got Guild Wars going on this week. Of course, we'll be covering that every single night as far as each color day. Just make sure to set all your defend teams, make sure they're all unique, so you end up getting the full 12,000 extra points, which you could tell by if it actually says 12,000 there. If it doesn't say that number, then you have a repeat somewhere within all the troops. You're allowed to repeat hero classes as well as banners, but you cannot repeat any troop, nor can you repeat any weapon, so do be mindful of that. Repeating a weapon does technically count as repeating a troop, so do be careful with that. Anyways, aside from that, of course, we do have our standard reward event, and by standard, hey, it actually is rarity order. So yeah, as long as you do rarity order, you're pretty much going to be fine as far as this event is concerned. You do get a little bit more points for doing the exact same battle of a typing. So in this particular instance, once we've cleared out all the higher rarity ones, if we have more like Lyrasza than whatever the other ultra rare is, we might want to focus the one that has more on the, in that particular instance. However, as long as you're taking the highest rarity and working down to your lowest rarity, you should pretty much be doing it correctly simply by doing that. As far as the restriction is a little bit annoying. We have plenty of ways to mana accumulate, but Assassin is a bit of a weird typing because we don't really have as many ways to hit all enemies simultaneously. This is pretty relevant because we do have magic as our additional thing, and even though we have access to a couple different skull spams, even Zugoff even, you can't really use them because it's going to give the enemy probably more value than you would even get because you don't get that extra skull damage buff off the metal. So a little bit of an annoying world event week this week. So do be mindful of that. Easiest way to do it is just like a heavy mana generator into black manacles. That's like the cheapest way that you can end up doing it, and your rest of the team is kind of just built around that. You could use any kind of purple AoE weapon, but black manacles, of course, the most accessible one. And Rage Carandera, not so much. But I think it's the only AoE, so we're just rolling with it. Anyways, as far as there's a cheaper one for the cheaper team, of course. But anyways, as far as this Tuesday, we have Lyrasza's Lair. Lyrasza's Lair, one of the more annoying factions within the game, potentially worth doing if you if you're at the point where you're doing level 500 pure factions and you're trying to do the more annoying ones first. That's one of them. It's probably in the top 3 most annoying factions in the game. That doesn't necessarily mean hardest, but gosh, this place is so absurdly annoying. The main gimmick of this place is every single troop there, I believe, has 3 different things that they roll between. So it has like an either or kind of option where it does one of 3 specific things. And this, of course, is very bad because you will generally not do exactly what you need. And it could take you casting multiple times before it actually does do the one thing that you wanted it to do. And this can make it be very inconsistent. So having potion effects to make that a lot more easier is quite beneficial. Anyway, aside from that, we got the Wednesday Talk Like a Pirate Day pet. Of course, the 2021 one. We ended up having the 2019 one on Saturday. And of course, the actual holiday for it was yesterday for Talk Like a Pirate Day. But yeah, we're getting the pet for that. It's just cosmetic, obviously. However, definitely make sure to pick it up because, of course, everyone has 0 copies of it currently, so definitely make sure to go and get it. Thursday, we have the Monk Hero class, kind of convenient. That's coming out during a Guild War week. It's a pretty decent Guild War related hero class. It's one of the main instances where it's used, mostly because when it's set on defend, it gains 3 mana whenever you get an extra turn. So as the AI will naturally start taking extra turns, it's basically a way to force the AI to get mana for your hero weapon, even if it's not necessarily taking that color, because not always will the AI necessarily go for the color that your hero weapon needs. However, if you're just naturally getting a mana every single time your AI team is getting an extra turn, well, it's just naturally going to be filling up your hero weapon. It's also a pretty noteworthy hero class in that it has the most amount of immunity of any hero class in the entire game by far. Not only that, but it has the most amount of immunities while also having cleanse on extra turn if you end up setting it. So it has a lot of ways to stay alive. It even has barrier on brown. And just overall, really good hero class. Even 20% dodge. It's a really tanky one. The main reason you generally don't see me using it too often is it doesn't have half mana start, so it does get a bit of a slower start in many situations. So when you're looking to quick kill battles, you generally won't be using it. But in harder battles and for Guild Wars, particularly Guild War Defend, though it can be used offensively too. But it ends up working out pretty well. So definitely a hero class if you haven't already gotten it leveled some. Definitely a good idea to do so. Of course, spending gems to level up hero classes is pretty expensive, but if nothing else, do the free battles for the event. And other than that, Friday, of course, we have a we have a Vault event weekend. We still don't know if it's gonna get nerfed or not. We can hope that it will not. But so far, it's been nerfed the last 2 times. Hopefully, a 3rd time will not be the case. So we'll find that out in the next few days or so as we get closer to the Vault event weekend. If nothing else, once it is the Vault event weekend, we'll know for sure by then if it's getting nerfed for a 3rd time in a row. Hopefully not, but we'll see. Of course, Vault event weekend, best time to be grinding in the entire game. The loot that you get for it is better than pretty much the rest of the time. Like, if you farm the entirety of the Vault event and for like 10 hours, I don't know, let's do one more realistic one. Let's say for 6 hours for those 3 days. That's pretty much more than all the loot you would have received for the other days, the 6 weeks between the Vault events. Pretty much. It's a lot of loot. So definitely make sure to utilize it while you can this weekend. It runs from Friday to Monday reset. So for those 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Anyways, as far as troops, there's not really anything worth crafting. However, there's one that's worth kind of mentioning, Astral Mother. If I'm not mistaken, I haven't actually even covered a video on this mythic. It was one of the mythics that came out during one of the 2 trips. I can't remember which one. Either the most recent one or the one earlier this year, a couple months back. But basically, this mythic is very, very useless. So the main reason I'm mentioning it is this is the first time it is in Soulforge since it was originally available a couple months back. But basically, as far as what it ends up doing, it removes all gems of a chosen color. Keyword remove, not destroy, meaning it does not accumulate the manas for whatever it's doing it on. And then it deals a bunch of true scatter damage boosted by gems removed. So let's say it does 10 greens. It would not accumulate the mana for those 10 greens and would end up doing around like 90 or so damage. Biggest issue with this is, well, Beatrix already does that. It'll already be doing about that much damage. It has a extra turn chance. It has gem spawn. It has cleanse. It just does so much more than this mythic ever was. It almost seems like Beatrix and mythic and this thing's ability should almost be switched because Beatrix is definitely the mythic in this situation. Not only this, but even if you just compare it to other mythics, it is green, yellow, purple. You know what else is green, yellow, purple? Arachnine Weaver. You know what else is impervious? Arachnine Weaver. Plus it has stealthy, which makes it even safer. Not this, but the Arachnine Weaver, that is. You know what has cheaper mana costs than it? Arachnine Weaver. You know what's better than it in pretty much every single possible way? Arachnine Weaver. So yeah, you pretty much never use this. The main unique thing to it is, well, it counts as Divine Centaur, but that particular aspect's pretty much never going to be valuable. And the other thing is, has a 40% chance to give Reflect to a random ally when its turn begins. There's by no means would you get enough value from that to bother justifying using it compared to Weaver or Beatrix. I can't think of a single instance, unless you're restricted in a very weird way, where you can use this but not somehow Weaver or Beatrix, and somehow I'm not sure exactly how. Maybe if like it's a Centaur restriction or something, or Divine restriction, I guess. But in those very rare circumstances, that's like the only time you'd really use it in comparison to other options that exist. It's just really underwhelming, and yeah, it's pretty useless. It's like almost D tier, at least relative to other options within the game. As far as the actual effectiveness, it's like C or B, but it just compared to other things, it's so bad. But this is the first time it's available, so if you want it for completion's sake, this is the first time it's been available, since it was available in the Glory Gem Guild and VIP chest drop table. So if you want to pick it up now, there's that, but it's pretty bad. Anyways, as far as the other weapons, there are 3 weapons that are worth crafting this week. The first one we have here is the Doomed Libram. This is pretty good for Guild Wars and pretty much only used for Guild War defense, which is kind of convenient because guess what? It's a Guild Wars week. So as far as this weapon is concerned, you definitely want to get the Doomed green weapon first, the one that hits all enemies and does the Doom Skull convert. However, if you're a little bit later into the game, you can end up going down this route. Of course, the biggest issue with it is getting it fully maxed out, and with how Doom events currently cycle in the game, this probably isn't getting maxed anytime soon. And because the other one's higher priority, it's a pretty low priority to get this unless you're like really late in the game. But it's still worth mentioning that's there. As far as things that might be more accessible for people as you're progressing through the game, if you still want to get something, probably Copaltine Wand. It's not used as often because Jar of Eyes is the exact same color and has Blue Storm, and while Jar of Eyes does have a 2 higher mana cost, the Blue Storm value is normally worth it. But as far as what this does, it explodes a bunch of reds, gives a bunch of stats effects to random or to all Shentang allies, and then ends up summoning a random Shentang troop. This is occasionally used if you're using a monk hero class because, you know, that would end up counting as one of your Shentang allies, so you'd get a positive stats effect from it. And if you're kind of doing it down that route where you're using like that hero class, maybe with like Yagwei, and kind of building around that kind of premise, and then you have that for your mana accumulation option, it can be okay. I don't feel like I personally use it much, but it's one of those explodey weapons, so it can never go wrong with them. Anyways, as far as Sky Hero, Sky Hero is the 3rd weapon here and the last of these that are maybe worth getting. I personally don't really ever touch this thing. However, it has potential. It destroys a column for, and then for every yellow gem destroys, it ends up doing 4 reds. Also is destroy, which means it actually accumulates mana, unlike some mythic. But it actually does accumulate the mana for everything it destroys, while also then creating a bunch of red. So basically, if you have 2 yellow within your column, you're basically like a deep borer as far as what this cast is. However, if you have 3 or 4, you're getting quite a bit of value from it, particularly 4. Of course, having the kind of situations where you can end up doing this, you need a team that's really heavily based on yellow and red. And in most situations like that, it's normally just more consistent going Flamer or going or Skia Crown or something similar. It's generally not worth going out of your way for Sky Hero, even if you are using a pretty heavy red-yellow team. And also in many other instances, it's just 1 mana off and same coloration as Rope Dart. And in many situations, Rope Dart is just used instead. It's a pretty inconsistent weapon. When it's working well, it's working really well because it's, you know, doing like 12 or 16 red into a board. And that is pretty much going to like auto extra turn. But then there's the situations where like the best you're going to get is a single yellow, and then all you did was destroy a column and create 4 red, which is almost nothing for a 13 mana cost cast. So it's very mixed. It has its really high highs and very low lows, and for that reason it's generally not used, because ideally you want a weapon that's doing something amazing every time you cast it, rather than a kind of mix of good and bad. But still worth mentioning. It's a utility weapon. While not used often, can be used and might have some kind of really broken synergy into the future, because of course as more troops come into the game, we'll have more synergies, and as one of those things that can potentially get more broken as more things happen. Anyways, let's go over all the teams. Of course, as per usual, all the team codes are in the description below if you want to go and copy and paste any of them. As far as this first one, this one you end up seeing when we end up going in the World Event screen earlier. We have Thrall and a bunch of AoE options. Thrall just doing a heavy amount of mana accumulation. Black Mana Gold probably being a staple for almost every single one of the teams, just because having an AoE option is going to be really useful, given that the Assassins don't really have as many options to do so. If you do have access to Enraged Carandera, it is one of the most expensive troops in the entire game. However, if you happen to have one laying around, this is one of the few instances you can actually go use it. It does have full AoE damage, which I believe is the only troop that has access to full AoE damage for this event. So, of course, you have hero weapons that can do it. There's a lot of hero weapons that can. But as far as troops, I'm pretty sure this is the only one, unless I didn't catch it when I was skimming through. But as far as like viable damage anyways, I think there might have been one that did like a really small poke, but as far as like actual substantial damage, and then you just do Black Mana Goals, you do that, you get your 2 mana accumulators down, cast both of them, win. That's pretty much the premise we're going with there. As far as your cheaper builds, we do have Cunning, so Cunning's pretty nice. While it can be a little bit expensive to fully trait, It does get 50% reduction off its second trait, and it is used for its double tap. It's up hitting 2 enemies. Also, I don't believe there's too many purples around for this event. However, if they are purple, it does end up doing twice as much damage, so you have that going for it, if nothing else. And the double poke is still pretty nice. And if they do happen to be purple, it should pretty much be one-shotting almost everything it touches with purple, so has all those kind of factors going for it. Definitely not too bad. Herd Masters is used here because Thrall isn't as good when you don't have as high magic, and this thing, as long as it destroys about 10 or explodes about 10, you're pretty much going to be good to go. And even really early on in the game, he should be exploding at least 10. Obviously, we're currently doing 47, which is way more than 10. But earlier on in the game, this will be a lot more accessible since you don't need nearly as much of a magic value to end up getting it rolling. Black Manacles is pretty standard. You can use any other purple AoE weapon, though Black Manacles is the more accessible one. You probably already have it by level 200, probably have it laying around already. And Leprechauns is kind of standard in power mana accumulator plus free gold, so this mostly was being used for there. Overall, it's still get the job done. But if you do have Enraged Carindare, it's probably a good idea to end up bringing it out. So this one for Lyrasza's Lair. I actually forgot when I was recording this earlier that Lyrasza's Lair is actually yellow and purple restriction. And for whatever reason, I actually thought it was like purple-blue earlier. I think it might be because the storm is purple-blue, so that's probably what got me confused. But anyways, as far as this team, I feel like I've shown this team almost every single week for like the last month now. However, it has been viable for every single faction we have had. Main difference I did with this one is a Thrall, because we do have access to purple this time, so you could do the Thrall for the really heavy purple. You don't actually go hero here because Thrall is just better mana accumulation when you have access to purple while also having access to yellow. So you can only ever do that specifically for a purple-yellow faction. And guess what? Lyrasza's Lair is purple-yellow. So you can get away with that. Anyways, aside from that, we have ourselves the kind of standard, just cheap yellow team, triple finesse into Nimbus Bow. Really great option. Both the first and final battle have quite a few yellows on them as well, so you get value that way. As far as pure faction, the main premise as far as how you win is Dementor spam. Every single thing here ends up having a roll between a bunch of different RNG as far as what ends up doing, which is of course very, very annoying. Each one of them has 3 different ones they can end up doing, as well as the other. Actually, I forget what the other one does. Actually, the other one might not be a random thing, but the mana accumulation it does just isn't worth it. But main premise here is double Dementor. The main reason for this is it does have Impervious and Agile. However, the main instance that it ends up doing is its amount of disable that it has. It'll either drain all mana from an enemy, which means they won't be able to cast, or steal a bunch of attack from the enemy, or silence the enemy. Ideally, what you want to have happen is you steal attack, and you get them basically down to 0 attack while increasing your attack, and then you end up killing them. And if you know one of the enemies are about to cast, you will have a 2 in 3 chance that you can go disable them either with mana drain or with silence. Do be mindful though, of course, if they have impervious or some kind of other immune, because you're doing one of the other battles, they might have immune to silence, which means you would only have a 33% chance to disable their cast rather than a 66% chance. However, on anything that doesn't have immune, you will basically have a 2 in 3 roll on if you're casting on something to try to stop their spell, that it will actually end up effectively doing so. But ideally, what you actually want to happening is just a bunch of attack steals early on so that you can get your attack up while reducing theirs so you don't die to their skulls, while also having a lot of skull damage for yourself. And then you ideally kill them off of skull damage. Chaos Hound, you generally don't really cast. However, you can if you're getting into a situation where you just want to try for a skull spam. Worst comes to worst, if you do lose one of your Dementors, which ideally you want both of them going into the final battle, you definitely need at least one going into the final battle. However, if one of them does die, you could try to summon a Chaos Hound in the first slot, so at least you have 4 troops again. And aside from that, Lyrasza, if she could consistently hit AoE, wouldn't be that bad. However, she has 3 different things that she'll end up doing, and of those 3, they're not bad. Every single one of them's technically good. However, the Dementor is where your main core build ends up getting your win condition from. You could theoretically try to do Lyrasza. The big issue with her is if you have a bunch of them on your team, you only have a 1 in 3 chance of doing damage. So let's say you have 3 of them on your team, realistically only one of them is actually going to do damage, and the other one's just going to do like mana accumulation, board clear with extra turn, you know, stuff like that. So it's generally not worth using her as a damage source just because of how consistent, since you're basically going to have to accumulate 16 times 3 is math 48, right? No, 50, I can't do math right now. Wait, I was right the first time, right? Because a 6, that's 18. Yeah, I was right, 48. That would cost 48 mana costs in order to cast her 3 times. which is pretty absurd just for basically 1 AoE. Obviously, luck could make it so it takes less or more. However, that's a lot of mana just for 1 AoE cast. So you generally want to go down the Domenicore route, as the chance that she would actually realistically do it in a timely manner is very much not so. Anyways, lastly, we have Monk Hero class. A couple different ways you could run this, of course. Well, pretty much every class event. However, this basically just feeds a bunch of yellow into a yellow weapon. You can end up using any yellow weapon. Dawnbringer just happens to be the best option. However, any yellow weapon that hits all enemies is also perfectly fine. And that's basically the whole premise here. We have Diviner in order to feed yellow. Feed all into a big yellow weapon. Tulio's here for the excess yellow, so you feed even more mana into your weapon, and you're good to go. And that's all you'd really have to do for the class event. And then, of course, after that, we have our Vault event weekend. And we'll be able to go and grind it out to quite a heavy extent, and hopefully they won't nerf it. But anyways, guys, I'll wrap it up for this video. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Feel free to leave a like on the video. It helps out a lot and is greatly, greatly appreciated. And of course, as always, we will be streaming here on the YouTube channel at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tonight we'll be covering all of the Chapter 7 tasks. And throughout the week, of course, we'll be doing Guild Wars. And the weekend, we'll be grinding Vault event weekend like crazy. And that's pretty much the game plan. Catch you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful week.